welcome to another episode of my podcast, One Woman is Twice Two Soldiers. I'm your hostess, Caitlin, with 15 plus years experience within living history as a hobby and over 20 years experience within sewing as a profession and hobby. This podcast explores things such as historic wardrobes, myth debunking, basically anything that revolves around my history research. Anything that sounds interesting to you, I'd love it if you would subscribe and consider following along. So last time we discussed dressing an 1860s woman, and this week we're going to talk about my plans for an heirloom garden. So without any further ado, let's get started. So let's talk with the goal first. So overall, my goal is to feed my family. That is the primary purpose of keeping a garden typically and slaving over it for half a year in the Texas heat. I don't do this for fun. I really don't do this for fun because I really actually dislike gardening quite a bit. It's not enjoyable to me, but I do like fresh veggies and I love watermelon. And I don't have a farm nearby where I can barter for fresh veggies and watermelons. So if I want those fresh, I have to grow them myself. I don't particularly have a green thumb, so I'm quite accustomed to my garden plans not working out as they should. Also, gardening has not really worked well for me the last few years. When I first got married, I moved 3 times in a year, so obviously a garden didn't happen. And then the year after that, we were so busy until March. Last year, I had some health issues that kind of cut things short. I wasn't able to spend as much time in the garden. I wasn't able to get it tilled till, I think, late March. And then keeping things weeded and all that wasn't the easiest. And this year, it just got so busy. We were busy all the time. And now it's March and I still haven't gotten my garden tilled. So I'll be planting much less this year than I hope to do next year. But sometimes that just happens. Last year was also the first year we were at this house, and with the garden, you till it up and just weeds grow crazy because you haven't had time to get rid of the seeds yet. You had to get rid of the weed seeds yet. So it was a lot to take care of at that point in time. So it kind of got out of control for a while. I actually did keep up with weeding it for quite a while, and then at some point in August I just gave up. But it's like 110 degrees here in August, so obviously it makes a lot of sense why I didn't want to be out there. It was just too hard to do it. So after feeding my family, the secondary goal is to only have heirloom plants in the garden. So when we move and we get more property, we've made the decision to only keep heirloom plants and animals where we can. Ideally, I want everything that we cultivate to be in America prior to 1870. Now, for a few varieties, because I live in a very hot climate, I had to push it back to some modern varieties. And when I say modern, I mean like 1960s, which for some reason is still considered heirloom. Personally, to me, I think anything post 1930 shouldn't be considered heirloom, but what do I know? So those are my disclaimers. The primary reason I have a garden is to feed my family, and the secondary ideal for the said garden is to keep only heirloom plants. So 2 winters ago, I bought a bunch of seeds from Annie's Heirloom Seeds. I have been pleased with the varieties I got to try last year. Because I started my garden a little bit late, I planted only a few plants, and I didn't get too big of a harvest, mostly just tomatoes and watermelons. The corn accidentally got mowed over. That was my bad. I forgot the corn was in the corner, and I let the grass get a little higher, and I couldn't tell the difference between grass and corn, and I just mowed over it. So that was a sad day. The lettuce and broccoli that I started last year, they looked great, and then I transplanted them into the garden right before what was supposed to be like a really light rainstorm. So I thought that'd be perfect. I'll get them in, they'll get a little bit of rain and be perfect. That ended up being quite the gully washer and ended up flooding the garden a little bit, which my garden's up pretty high, so the fact that it was flooding, we had a lot of rain that day, so obviously there were no plants left there. Roots hadn't really gotten in, so they were just washed away. Fortunately, everything else that I already had in the garden was well established and hung on. My beans, I have no idea what happened to my beans last year, honestly. They did so well as seedlings. I got them transplanted, they grew all over the fence. They bloomed, and then suddenly they just withered and turned brown, and I don't know what happened. It wasn't super hot. I was watering them regularly. I really don't know what happened. So I'll try those again maybe this year. I also just purchased my pepper and my tomato seedlings last year because I missed the seed planting windows for those. The harvest was okay. About half the tomato plants made it. The ones I had on the front fence did really well, but the ones for some reason on the side fence really didn't. I did buy those at a separate time at a separate place, so I don't know if it was the place in the garden that they didn't like, or if it was the variety, or just the store that I got them from just wasn't the best. I don't know. I did have a lot of tomatoes, not enough to can, but enough to eat regularly. And I had a ton of peppers that did well, and I still have a container of those in my freezer still. The watermelons did super well. I got some really large ones. They were super sweet, and I'm pretty sure there were a couple of weeks where I only ate watermelon for like 3 to 4 days at a time, and that was all that I had. I'm telling you, I love watermelon. The pumpkins were doing fine, and then we had a freak chill come through a weekend that was not expected. We were out of town too. It got below freezing well before it usually does here, and so I wasn't expecting it, and the plants froze. Really, I learned a lot about the type of soil I have here this last year, and also the biggest lesson I learned is that I need to get better at tracking the weather through the weather app on my phone and that sort of thing, because I need to start keeping track of that for my garden, because a lot of things failed because of weather issues. So we'll see how well I apply those lessons this next year. Over this last winter, when I had nothing else to do, I did buy some seed packs, a seed binder, and I got to work with labeling the packs and putting in my seeds. So now I have my seeds organized by plant. It's a bit full now. I'm gonna need to work on that, but at least it's nice and organized for the time being. I have plans to eventually alleviate this so it's not quite so full. And I do have a second binder that I can reorganize things in. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So at least I have all my seeds organized, and I have the seed, I have the type of plant, the variety, and usually I have the year it was developed or sold or whatever. The earliest date that I can date the plant to. My eventual plan right now is just by plant, but the eventual plan is to have dividers by month. That way I can open to the January section at the beginning of January and see all the seeds I need to actually start planting. And then on 1st February I can do the same thing on all the way through the year. I think that's going to be the easiest way for me to process it. Just learn when I need to plant things for my area and have it all there. Because usually I like to start my seeds indoors, so it's not as big of a deal with frost and all that sort of thing. I think I'll actually start that project of getting them by month, maybe in the fall. I might start in July to get my fall garden started, and just, whatever I plant each month, I'll just put it in that month's section, and then I'll just finish January through June next year. And so by next summer, I should have the whole binder done. I think I might actually take my binders and do like a January through June and then a July through August binder, because I do have 2 of these binders, and again, it's already quite full, and this is not nearly all the seeds I plan eventually on having. So this is just my getting started binder. So when I plant seedlings, what I do, again, I'm not a real gardener, so take this for what you will. I use old egg cartons for my seedlings because it's the right size and I can get them to a decent size before I plant them into the garden. I have a ton of them because I have 33 chickens, and so people just drop off egg cartons all the time, and I don't use all of them for eggs. So using them for seed cartons usually works out really well for me. I use the lids and I label the rows on the lids. That way I know what's what, and then I have the seedlings in the little egg parts. I typically use the soil we have outside. Sometimes I'll mix some potting soil with it, but usually I just use the soil that we have outside, which is really sandy where I am here in Central Texas. Really sandy. And then I put that into there, and I put the seeds in there, water them, and I keep them on the ledge of my back porch because I find that my seeds do better that way because it gets so hot here. Even the plants that say full sun can't handle it as seedlings. So when I put them on my back porch, because my house faced west, they get morning sun, and then by noon they are covered in shade. So the hottest part of the day they are in the shade, and that seems to work really well. The ones I've had in full sun either never grew or they withered shortly after sprouting, and so I found that for me that works best. And then right before transplanting in the garden, so my garden gets like 95% sun. And so what I do is I have my little egg cartons out there, and I just kind of put them in the garden, and I watch them, and if they ever start looking like they're going to wilt or whatever, I take them in for a few hours, and I just kind of slowly acclimate the plants. After they're good for a week out there in the garden and they don't wilt, then that's, in my opinion, time to transplant them. They're going to be okay at that point. So I'm a little overly cautious about that because I've had a lot of plants do really well as seedlings in my little containers, but as soon as I transplant them, they die. And I think part of that was they just weren't acclimated to having full sun all the time. Now my garden, I said it's like 95% sun. At the very hottest part of the day, around 4, 5, 6, it is shaded because there's some really large oak trees in the front. So that is good, but they have to deal with like midday sun, they have to deal with like early afternoon sun, and some plants just can't handle that when they're really young. So yeah, once I transplant them, I just cross my fingers and hope there's not, a heat wave or some sort of crazy storm. That's just all I can do. Again, I'm not the best gardener. I mean, I've been gardening since I was little. My mom's a really good gardener. She still keeps a garden, but I am not the best at it. I don't think I've ever really been the best at it. I can sometimes keep plants alive, and then sometimes I can't. So it's just a hit or miss with me. So I don't think it's the soil specifically. We have super sandy soil here, which some plants do really well in, like the watermelons, and others don't. The peppers did really well, the watermelons did really well, but I might have to substitute. So I may just have to add something to the soil for some other plants and that sort of thing. So let's get to the variety of seeds I've already purchased. Again, these are all heirloom seeds, and I want to eventually exclusively use heirloom seeds. Right now, because I didn't have the heirloom seed requirement early on in my gardening phase when I was living alone, I still have some modern seeds that I didn't want to throw out. That was wasteful. So I'm currently just using them up, and I'll continue to use those until they're gone. But I probably won't save the seeds like I will, and I have been doing with the heirloom plants that I've been planting. The eventual goal, is to really never have to buy seeds or seedlings again once I get the system rolling out. This would make us a little bit more self-sufficient if I didn't have to rely on repurchasing seeds every year. Now, of course, things do happen. Like I may get a few bad years of some crop where I no longer have a stash of that particular seed and I'm going to have to go and buy more. And I don't mind that so much. But if I can avoid repurchasing seeds, I will avoid it. I'm all about saving money, so if I don't have to purchase seeds again, I'm calling it free food. Yes, I did have to purchase the original seeds. And I think technically in business, you should if you got 30 years out of those seeds, you should divide. At that point, it's basically free anyway. But my opinion, the easier way to do it is I paid for the first crop because I paid for the seeds, and any seeds I gathered from that crop, those are all free. And from then on, the food is just free. So I have my seeds in alphabetical order, so I think we'll just go through alphabetical order and starting with asparagus, apparently. So I only purchased one variety of asparagus. It's the Mary Washington asparagus, which if you Google it, says it was cultivated in the early 20th century. I found an 1853 reference to it, and I've also found an 1880s reference. So the 1850s reference makes it pre-1870, which makes it fit into my desired time frame. This is one thing I've not tried planting yet because we are considering moving closer to Rhett's work. And asparagus does take a few years to take off and give a good crop. And I don't want to waste my good seeds and potentially not get the good crop. And then also potentially have people who move in who just don't care about gardening and just let them go. And I don't want to waste the seeds. So I'm waiting until we decide what we're going to do as far as that goes. So maybe next year, maybe the year after, I can start the asparagus. Because I really do like asparagus. Especially when it's tossed in like homemade fresh butter and a little bit of garlic. And sometimes I like to put a little bit of Parmesan on it. It's really good. So for beets, we can start with beets. I actually really dislike beets. They taste like dirt, and no amount of cooking or seasoning or anything can make them not taste like dirt to me. That's what they taste like to me. I did pick up a somewhat later variety. I picked up in 1892. That's the Detroit dark red beet. Some plants I did have to pick up later varieties. There are a couple of reasons. One, I couldn't find the earlier varieties because a lot of plants just got lost. The seed varieties just got lost, and no one's really selling them. I also didn't want to pick up seeds from like 20 different places, so I may eventually go back and see if I can find one or two varieties of some of these later crops in the earlier time frames with different sites other than Annie's heirloom seeds. I just made the one order the last year. This is what I have right now. The other reason I may have picked up a later plant is because I'm not the best at gardening, and therefore I very much desire to pick seeds that are slated to grow in my area, in my zone, and that way I have the best chance of them working out. So some earlier varieties just don't work as well in my very hot, very dry climate as the later varieties that were, specifically bred to have certain traits, such as being able to grow in a super hot, dry climate. So in some instances, I picked up a later variety just so they would be successful in my zone. Again, with the bees, I picked up 5 variety of beans. I have the modern Alabama Black Eye Lima pole bean because I wanted a black eye pea, and this was supposedly really easy to grow and it grows in my area, so I picked that one up. Then I also got the Cherokee Trail of Tier beans, which is pre-1830, and then 3 beans that date to prior that date prior to 1800. That would be the Mayflower pole bean, the rattlesnake pole bean, and the scarlet runner bean. And I probably won't plant all 5 bean plants each year, but I'll alternate them. So we'll do 2 next year and maybe the 3 next year, that sort of thing. And so I can alternate them for whatever I want. Beans are something that I don't can to preserve. I just dry out so I can rehydrate and cook them later. One day we'll do a podcast on the history of canning. But being that I wanted more of an old-fashioned farming experience, I plan on canning very little. But instead eating in season and then drying things that I can dry, putting things in a root cellar type situation that would be more akin to what was happening more in the 19th and 18th centuries. So anything that I can keep that doesn't require canning is a plus in my book. So beans are really good for that. You can dry them out very easily. I also have one variety of broccoli. It is a 1900 variety called the Calabrese broccoli. I'm probably going to butcher some of these names. I probably could find an earlier one, but broccoli wasn't super popular into the mid-19th century, so it makes sense. So it makes sense that the earliest variety that Annie's Heirloom Seeds would have would be like a 1900 variety. So that was the one I could easily get my hands on. For cabbage, I picked a pre-1750 one called the Futog cabbage, and the one also dating to 1850, which is the large, flat Dutch cabbage. Then I also picked up a 14th century carrot, the lunar white carrot, and I may go back and add a few more carrot varieties. I like carrots, and Rhett likes carrots. I've never had good luck with carrots, so maybe I just won't bother, but Rhett really does like carrots. He also likes celery too, which is why I picked up a pre-1900 variety, which is the best date I could get on the giant Prague celery. For corn, I picked up 2 varieties right now. So it's the Golden Bantam Sweet, which is pre-1870. And then a later one, I did a 1910 Lancaster Sure Crop, which was supposed to be a little bit more suited to my area and the lack of rain that we get sometimes. I do want to go back and pick up a couple of older, maybe more colorful varieties for popcorn and that sort of thing. But right now, those are the 2 that I got. So on to cucumbers. I have plenty of modern homemade pickling cucumber seeds, so I will be using until I run out. And I also have a 1976 variety called the Poinsett. I'm on the lookout for some seeds for an 1842 variety called the long green cucumber, but Annie's Heirloom Seeds was out of stock when I ordered last year. As far as greens go, I did pick up some old-fashioned mustard greens which date to 1825. I considered getting a 1900 variety of Georgia Southern collards, but I don't really eat collard greens enough to justify. I may consider that again if our diet changes. And on to lettuce. So I picked up 3 varieties of lettuce, the red oak leaf dating to before 1770, and the tennis ball which dates to 1810, and also the black seeded Simpson which dates to 1875, so just past my ideal time frame. But I like to eat lettuce in salads in early spring, so I like to have a good variety of lettuce and leaves to put in my salads. I also do want to go back and get the 1820 prize head lettuce seeds just to add a little bit more variety as well. And again, that would also fit within my desired time frame. Again, I likely wouldn't plant them all at once, maybe 2 a year, just to keep things interesting, and that way I can get a little variety without having to plant so many plants. And now melons. So we have discussed how much I love watermelon, and honestly, I like cantaloupe too. But I only like cantaloupe if it's fresh and very sweet. So it has to be like from the garden. I don't like the store-bought cantaloupe. It's just not good. So there is the 1806 variety of green nutmeg melon that I bought just to give it a try. I think I only tried 2 seeds last year and neither one of them made it. I think they got drowned out by the watermelon. Even though I planted them far apart, the watermelon seeds I planted were huge. And so the plants got massive. So I think I just need to space them out a little bit more. Maybe they can make it this year. For cantaloupe, I picked up a later variety. Melons are one of the things that changed a lot in the 19th century. So if you want something closer to what we would consider to be that fruit, you're going to want like a more modern variety, because 18th and early 19th century melons look nothing like what we would consider watermelons, honestly. So I picked up the 1925 Honey Rock cantaloupe and the Sierra Gold cantaloupe from 1960, which is a more popular variety. And now for my beloved watermelon. All of these are later varieties. I would love to get a pre-1871 one day. So I got the Desert King from 1920, which is an amazingly sweet yellow fruited watermelon. It's amazing. I got the Black Diamond from 1940 and then the Crimson Sweet from 1964. For onions, although I've never tried doing onions from seed, we'll see how this goes next year because it's too late this year. But I picked up 2 1940s varieties which are specific to Texas, so they should grow in my area. I figured I'd have the easiest chance with them since I never tried growing onions from seed. So I got the early Texas grano onion and the early red Texas grano onion. I also picked up the pre-1900 variety of pea called the tall telephone pea. For peppers, I got the early jalapeno and then the pre-1820 bullnose bell pepper, which should be like a green bell pepper. And now for pumpkins, I picked up the 1883 Cinderella pumpkin just because I liked the name, even though it was just a little bit past my time frame, and the pre-1800 Connecticut field pumpkin. I also did a modern 1926 variety of spaghetti squash because that is the only type of squash that I like. The others are too slimy. The two variety of tomato that I wanted were out of stock, and those would be the pre-1700 Alberto Shatters tomato and the pre-1850 large red tomato. So instead, for the time being, I picked up Annie's variety pack of heirloom tomatoes, which has some things that are all the way up to like the 1980s. So I don't know, I definitely would not consider the 1980s heirloom, but that's just me. So I got the old German tomato dating to 1850, the pink brandy wine dating to 1886, Aunt Ruby's green tomato, which is 1920, and the Matt's wild cherry tomato, which I couldn't find a date on, and also the 1985 Amano orange tomato. And again, I don't think that 1985 counts as an heirloom seed, but apparently it does to Annie heirloom seeds. And finally, turnips. So I picked up the 1859 gold ball turnip, but we don't eat a lot of turnips. I mash them like mashed potatoes, and they're pretty good that way, but otherwise I'm just not the biggest fan of turnips, so I just felt like one variety would be fine for us. I also bought a bunch of herb seeds, so most of these have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and I couldn't find a specific date on them, so I just didn't date my herbs. I like to keep somewhat of a dried herb apothecary in the house. I'm not 100% reliant on home remedies, but I did spend a really good amount of time in middle and high school researching herbal remedies and herbs, so I know kind of what they can do. Do I think they can cure cancer like some people claim? Absolutely not. But they can help alleviate things like cold and flu symptoms or PMS symptoms, and I like to save money by growing my own medicine where I can, and then continue to use regular modern medical care as needed. Bonus, most of the healing herbs that I picked out either double as either natural dyes, teas for drinking, or spices and seasoning for cooking. So I bought angelica, anise, annatto, basil, German chamomile, Roman chamomile, cilantro, dill, horehound, hyssop, marshmallow, peppermint, mustard, oregano, sage, shepherd's purse, St. John's wort, rosemary, and yarrow. There are probably some other ones I want to pick up. That's what I currently have. I know I will definitely want to pick up some lamb's ear. And there was something else, but I don't remember what it was right off the top of my head. So I got a few of my herbs up and going last year, but then a windstorm came and broke all my pots because I had them hanging on like some really thick rope, and it broke everything. So all my beautiful herbs got crushed, which is sad. So new plan, they need to go into the ground or in a window basket, but I don't have that option right now, so I'm considering holding off on the herb garden until we get more settled into a hopefully more permanent place, so I don't have to dig up another section of dirt for and keep weeding that and all of that. So those are the seeds I have currently purchased that are in my very full binder, and honestly I don't think I can fit any more in here. I have a second binder again, and I'm not sure again if I want to split them by fruits and veggies, like have fruits in one and veggies in the other, if I want to do by the month, and I'm leaning towards by the month like I talked about earlier. Obviously I still have some seeds to buy. I haven't gotten any fruit trees or berry bushes in there yet, and that will be an absolute must. I actually haven't fully researched what varieties of fruits and berries that I want yet, but we also are not at the point where I want to start planting an orchard or a berry grove. Hopefully in the next 2 years will be when I get to that, but that is not a right now project. I would love to have some fruits and berries again. I get good wild blackberries that should be, because they grow around here like weeds. They're all over the property. They're all over the sides of the roads. I spent a couple weekdays last year, and I had buckets and buckets of berries. So I'll be doing that again. They should be starting actually blooming next month, so I can start refilling the freezer because I think I'm on my last glass jar from last year's gathering. I may not have done well with gardening last year, but I did a really great job at foraging over the spring and summer. So many wild good things that are around, and we own a 1929 Ford Model A, and we just like putter around in the old abandoned parts of the county with all these crazy country roads that no one ever drives down, and you get the really good foraging spots that way. Now the eventual plan is to move past the binders and to get some sort of very large filing system for my seeds, where I can get something that's bigger than the seed packets and I can really stockpile some seeds. just in case a crop or two doesn't make. So right now I can't fit very many seeds in the pack, especially for the larger seeds. And I haven't quite figured out the larger system yet, and I have quite a few years before I'm actually going to need it, so it's not a right now problem. And the binder system will work for right now. So I've looked at some seed storage systems, and they just look smaller than what I eventually want. Like, my opinion, I'm thinking like a circa 1900 wooden U.S. postal box cabinet with some slide drawers where I can keep each year's seeds organized in my little seed packet. So I can have like one for asparagus, and I can have like, okay, 2027 seeds and 2028 seeds and 2029 seeds. That way I have a variety. I'm using them up. But like if one crop doesn't do well, I can use either another year's seeds, or I have extra that are available for me. I feel like that would be the most efficient. That would require quite a bit of space though, and I just don't have that now. But it would look really nice and organized. And then I could just keep my binder as like my list of what to plant when, and then like my more detailed plant and care instructions. But I think that's where we are with that. So that will just about wrap up this episode of One Woman is Twice Two Soldiers. Thank you so much for listening to my plans for an heirloom garden and the seeds that I am currently collecting. I had a lot of fun planning for this, and I look forward to doing more. I think eventually when I get the full system going, we'll come and do an update podcast. I think that would be fun. Next episode, we'll be discussing my method for examining original garments and reminding ourselves how to find original garments to examine. So be on the lookout for that episode in the coming weeks. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me or find me on Instagram or YouTube under the name Caitlin Kearns. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of One Woman is Twice Two Soldiers. If you did, please leave a review on YouTube or Spotify, leave a comment, whatever, and share this episode with your friends. Also, please do not hesitate to tell me any topics you would like me to cover in future episodes. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.